Welcome back, Borderlines, Lagos, Nigeria, abroad, wherever you're listening to us from. My name is Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. This is the only show that takes you beyond borders. I enjoyed that conversation, my previous conversation with my guest, Anne Louise, where we talked about the US elections, and that is going to be dominating a lot of our conversations in time to come. However, so we've been all the way to the US via Mexico. Now we are coming back to Africa. Yes, Africa, our continent, a most important conversation. So let me just paint the picture for you in 2 minutes. Remember Libya? Let me take you back to a time when Libya was the country that was leading Africa. That country that all of Africa looked forward to. Under Muammar Gaddafi, Libya was safe. Libya had high GDP. Libya had high education rate. They literally got everything free. Thanks to Libya, countries like Nigeria didn't have insurgency. We didn't have terrorists in our backyard. Gaddafi kept them away from us. And then something happened. Libya was invaded by the US and Gaddafi was killed. And all of a sudden, everything changed in Libya. Libya, the country that was once a hub for African migrants seeking better life, has become the horror of the place of horror and dehumanization, with porous borders and chaotic political landscape. So I have with me a wonderful guest who is going to talk us through all of this, because we're going to be talking about migrants, migration, and India, and Libya. You've heard it before. You've heard what happens in Libya. His name is David Yambio. He is a community advocate and spokesperson at the NGO Refugees in Libya. His own experience of a forced exile inspired him to fight for human rights and the well-being of migrants and refugees on both sides of the Mediterranean. David, welcome to Borderlines. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you hear me?
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So tell us, first let's start with your personal experience. Tell us about your personal experience in like 2-3 minutes.
Well, I have a variety of personal experience.
No. I'm talking about your personal experience in exile.
Yes, I'm coming to that.
Okay.
I'm coming to that. With the exile, of course, coming from South Sudan, that is the country where I was born, and back then it was Sudan until its division in 2011, and today we have two different nations, the South and the North of Sudan. So our country, after having fought 21 years civil war and then gaining independence, only 2 years later, in 2013, another civil war started, which have displaced over 3 million refugees, mostly the youthful population, to the neighboring country, and have taken the lives of more than 500,000 in only 7 years. So during these years of struggle, in 2016, I left my country and I became a refugee. I traveled to neighboring countries in Sudan and in Chad, where I was as a refugee. And the conditions of a refugee in those countries is something that I cannot describe. I have been to countries like Nigeria, where I am speaking to you today, and it's a wonderful country. But if you are a refugee, that's something already a problem, because the time when I was in Nigeria, I was also witnessing a huge crisis of Boko Haram in northern Nigeria, and so on and so forth. So living through those situations, I found myself in Libya at the end of 2018. And at this point, Libya was only a nightmare made of torture, exploitation, slave labor, dehumanization, all sort of, process of extortion from families, where men are burned by torture, women are defeated by rape. This circumstance was not an ordinary circumstance, as you well described. the rule of Gaddafi, his approach, his, infrastructure that he managed to build for the Africans who were seeking better life. This was now a mechanism which was set and influenced by the European countries, aiming to curb the arrival of migrants in the European territory. For this, I found myself not able to return back to Chad, not able to return back to my country of origin, and not able to stay in Libya. For this reason, in early 2019, I tried to cross the Mediterranean. For the first time, I was captured at sea in international water, brought back to Libya, incarcerated, tortured, put into forced enslavement, and all those inhuman treatment that I experienced for 7 horrible months in Misrata. I made a second attempt, third attempt, fourth attempt. I was captured and returned back to the same repeated circle of violence. All this, I was not the only one. I have witnessed a variety of nationalities who have been subjected to innumerable tortures, innumerable form of dehumanization. And until I made my final attempt, which was the 5th time in late 2022, and I arrived in Italy where I am today. But before I arrived, I had already started what we are today, Refugees in Libya, which was an initiative formed by self-organized people on the move, refugees who are in Libya from 11 different nationalities, to challenge the inhuman treatment, to challenge the consciousness of the international community, to challenge also the authorities' role and their responsibilities towards us, and the intervention of European countries, specifically Italy and Malta, when they engaged in an agreement with the Libyan militias, with a country that has been at war for a number of years.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us. It sounds absolutely harrowing. One of the things you said was that you were turned back at sea, not once, not twice, 4 times, and then eventually you made it to Italy, you made it to Europe, the 5th time. Why do you think, given such perilous conditions, Africans continue to attempt that journey, which you yourself did 5 times before you were able to cross over?
The reasons, as I can speak for myself and for those that I have interacted with over the years, is, again, most of the people who found themselves in Libya, like myself, I did not find myself in Libya with the intention to cross the Mediterranean. There was a circumstance that had pushed me, and in Libya, I would have wished to work and wait until my country is at peace, but this was nothing like that. Those torture, I couldn't live with it. I couldn't have access to anything. I was nobody. I was a complete outlaw, because when you are an outlaw in a society, you cannot receive any protection from the common people under the pretext that they will too be criminalized. I was an outlaw in the process that even the government could not regard my status as a refugee, as a stateless person, as an immigrant, under whatever condition or the term that was given to me. It is the same with people who find themselves that going back on the desert to countries of origin is 20 times harder than crossing the Mediterranean. And the slowness that occurs today in the desert is something that has not well been documented. There is a huge population of people who have died in the desert that are not accounted for. And this, we have witnessed it during my journey. And on the Mediterranean also to this day, the death toll on the Mediterranean since 2015 is more than 30,000 people, at least the least documented one. These are individuals whoever's listening to but they have been forced by circumstance beyond human endurance. And this is what we should be talking about, what is happening.
So you talk about the torture that takes place in in Libya. Why do you think after Gaddafi, who was a Pan-African, why do you think Libyans, and because we talk about Libya as if, everybody in Libya is actually practicing the same. Is there a particular part of Libya where this happens? Does it happen amongst a particular type of people or of the society in Libya? What is going on? How would you describe that to us? Break it down for us. What that Libya, the Libya that treated you and other migrants, other African migrants so badly. Talk to us about that Libya.
To be sincere, there is a huge variety of good Libyans out there. Very good people. We are talking about the process of dehumanization, as I said earlier, that is being influenced by the European migratory policies, the border externalization of European governments, and the financement of private entities, including militias, including rebel groups, mafia groups that are, experts in drugs, in human trafficking. This is something that only could happen under the fall of Gaddafi. When Gaddafi was dismantled and he was massacred, his country terrorized and reduced to nothing, European countries found the perfect timing to give money to private militias, to a competing government that we are talking about today, authoritative powers in the east and in the west of Libya. There is two governments. One of it has been recognized by the UN backed-up system. The United Nations have recognized one of the government after the death of Gaddafi. And the one in the east are of people who decided to not recognize what the United Nations imposed on them. Again, this is where we come and find the responsibility and the subjugation of European countries, when they have been subjugating these countries to say, listen, this is what you can do. We will give you millions of money to stay in power. It will help you with resources, with weapons, with cars that you need that can move in those deserts in a very accelerated manner. We will provide you with the patrol boats that cannot be afforded except if you have millions of money. This is what is happening, and this allocation of resources is being distributed through tribal groups, through different entities, through, like in Tripoli, you have different militia groups that are divided. Each in a community have their own governance system. In Zawiya, you have their own militias. In Zintan, in Zuwara, in Misrata, and in the east, you have a different system also. The Benghazi system, and in south, where most people enter, in Sabha, you have different entities that practice their own work of either human trafficking or the process of combating irregular immigration, which is a pure deception because no one is really aiming to combat this process of irregular immigration. The process is to capture these people, put them in a containment, in a concentration camp, and extort them, torture them, rape them, put them into forced enslavement, ask their family to pay a huge and enormous amount of money. And this is a process that have been well documented by the independent fact-finding mission, including crimes against humanity, which have been committed throughout the years. And this has been committed thanks to the financement of the European actors, the European countries like Italy, Germany, France, to mention a few, Malta.
So let me just get that straight. David, if I may interrupt you, are you saying that that trafficking industry is being aided by the EU or European countries?
That's right. This is well documented by different entities, independent fact-finding mission. They released a report last year in June. If you try to find that report, fact-finding mission report on Libya, it is well detailed that it has accumulated enormous revenue, which is a business model that generate money to both the Libyan Authority, the European actors, and private sectors throughout the region. It's the continuation of slave trade. These roots have never truly died. It's happening in different form that Europe needs cheap labor. They need to import people. They keep saying we need people to come through safe and legal pathways, but it is not there. They want them to die, to be in this state of constant need, that once I arrive here in Europe, in Italy, I have to work in a firm in the southern Italy, in Palermo, where I'm being paid €6 an hour, and that is barely nothing. I don't have any entitlement to health insurance, social security, nothing at all whatsoever, because I am undocumented. I am a person who is being categorized and labeled as an economic immigrant coming from Nigeria because they do not want to listen to my circumstance. They do not want to acknowledge my needs and wants and my rights within a society. This is what is happening.
Interesting.
The same is now extended to Tunisia.
Right. So when we hear, because one of the things that's very big in all global politics right now, I mean, we're in a season of elections. We've had the elections in the UK. We've got the elections coming up in the US. We've had elections in France. Every election in every country has immigration, or at least migration, illegal especially, at the top of their issues. Yet here you are, you're saying Europe is actually aiding the trafficking. Why then? What is the campaign about? The campaign against immigration. Is it European left wing or liberals that's actually aiding these traffickers, or is it European conservatives, or is it Europe as a whole? When I say Europe, I mean the EU countries.
I mean, the issue of migration is benefiting almost everyone who is in Europe here. Don't tell me right, liberal, left wing, all these entities have found their initial focus on migration. I'm talking about an electoral campaign of 2022 when I had just arrived in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
The Prime Minister currently, Giorgia Meloni, heading Italy, was elected on this promise to combat irregular immigration. And she's doing this in a very wonderful way without understanding the root causes. Our entire campaign was about immigration. They're coming to change our identity. We do not know who these people are. They are invaders. We cannot accept to receive these people in such an amount. And this is a pure hypocrisy when they talk about receiving or respecting human rights, because I will refer you to the Ukrainian crisis. When the war started in February 2022, we were in the streets in Tripoli. We were calling for help. We were calling for different type of support, which was never given to us. Within a year, 8 million refugees from Ukraine have been dissolved into the European society. In this apartment where I am now, there are Ukrainian families who are not paying the rent. They are receiving enormous support from the state. They are not sleeping in the street as people of my color do. So when you look at this number, compared to the people who have been forced by circumstance to cross the Mediterranean Sea illegally, this is a very low number. So based on this, again, the European elections that happened a month ago in June, it was all about what? It was about immigration. Each state is promising to defend their border. Each state is saying, we will do this, we will carry out mass deportation of people to their countries of origin, regardless of whether they are fleeing from individual persecutions, war, whatever the ambitions have been, that push to their arrival to the European territories.
Yeah.
This is not happening. So looking at this, the human trafficking trade, as I said again, is a system that is politically and indirectly being influenced by the European state, such that when people do not have safe passages, they do everything to find different ways, which is irregular. And in this way, they pay 10 times the amount which, if they were to come to Italy legally, they are paying it 20 times or 10 times. When you are captured and returned to Libya, like in my own experience, how much money I have to pay? How much money that a person from Bangladesh, from Egypt has to pay repeatedly, from Syria? They are being charged and extorted 10,000 each a trip, $10,000. That is an enormous amount of money that has an African, someone coming from a wretched country like South Sudan, I cannot afford, not even my entire family. When you look at the amount of this, revenues that is being generated through different entities, how do you think these people operate? How do they operate without bank accounts? They have international partners, bank accounts that operate through in the Middle East, in Europe. And how do you think these boats are organized? The boats that we are using to cross the Mediterranean, it's nothing manufactured in Libya. It's in France, Italy, the resources from Germany, all these things. Now we're looking at a case in the ICC we have a case in the International Criminal Court against two Eritreans who are accused of money laundering in the United Arab Emirates and human trafficking. Walid and Kidane were two guys working in Libya. They had international partners, which I'm speaking because there is a reason why I want to highlight this, that even in the ICC, they do not want to investigate the perpetrators who were supporting these two people to kill their own people in the process of human trafficking, which are clearly Europeans who supported them with bank accounts, with the transfer of millions of money. And these people are being accused of only money laundering, not in Europe, but in the United Arab Emirates.
So let me understand.
Something which is not right.
So let me understand for the sake of my listeners. You can call, or you will be able to. Let me just say, we are still streaming live on YouTube, Nigeria Info FM, on Facebook Live, on Twitter. We are also on Instagram, Nigeria Info FM Lagos. You will be able to call on 0201 277 0993. Female line is 0201 465 7190. And WhatsApp, you can send your WhatsApp whilst I'm in conversation with David if you have any questions or comments to 0809 597 5805. Now, let me just come back. So what you're saying is there is a case at the ICC, David. There's a case at the ICC. Two Eritreans who have been arrested for what? For trafficking? For human trafficking?
And money laundering.
And money laundering, right? And they've been accused of money laundering by whom? By the Saudi Arabians?
No, they have been accused by the United Arab Emirates.
Okay, the UAE,
Dubai.
yeah.
And yes, and here in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, there are Eritrean victims who were extorted in Libya or were tortured directly by Walid and Kidane, and these issues of human trafficking is being brought against them. But what we as refugees in Libya have tried to push on is the investigation of European actors, because these people could not have a network which have operated and generated enormous amount of money over the period of 40 years without the support of European actors. This was an international organization aimed for human trafficking with the aim of Europe to have access to cheap laborers without having to pay for anything, without having to consider the rights of the people who have arrived within the European territory, to have an equal right when living in Europe.
Interesting. Okay, you can call. I will pick up your call. Now, let's talk about those, the centers, the detention centers in Libya. Talk to us. How does one survive? What are they like? And what are the conditions in there? And how does anybody survive within those detention centers?
The format of detention center in Libya they come in various ways. There are the ones that are official detention center, and these detention centers are managed by the Minister of Interior. And the Ministry of Interior is then break down into the Directorate for Combating Irregular Immigration. And these facilities are immediately financed by European countries, more specifically Italy, and the DGNIA, which is the Directorate General for Neighborhood Enlargement and Negotiations, as well as the European External Action Services. So these entities are the ones financing the official detention center, where once people are captured at sea or collected at checkpoint or in the streets, they are put in these official centers. And the purpose is to identify them, to go through certain process of screening where they can be repatriated to their countries of origin. And I'm just remembering now that 2 days ago, a group of Nigerians were deported back. Do you have any idea of that? That is how the process in this detention center, they claim that here people are provided with food, with water, with places to sleep, which is not true. The situation in these centers, like I will mention a few. in Tariq Sika in Tripoli. Anyone who have been in Libya knows what I'm talking about. Tariq Sika, Tariq Matar, in Khoshal, Al Mabani, Homus Detention Center, and many more that are under the Ministry of Interior, which is directly financed by Europe. These detention facilities, again, extort money from the people because once it is full, because it feels like a concentration camp, people don't have access to natural
or
outside the window. They don't eat. If they ever get a chance to eat, it's once a day, and it's pieces of macaroni that you can count, which is a pasta. All these things causes a lot of diseases, skin disease, because people don't take shower for a number of months. People don't have access to clean drinking water. They are forced to drink from toilets, and the toilet waters are waters that immediately drawn from the Mediterranean Sea, and it is salty. It makes people develop health issues, and so on and so forth. This is just the official detention center. And to get out of this detention center, which is official, you are either asked to pay 1,000 dinar or 2,000 dinar, which is an equivalent to more or less $400 to $500. And now let's go to the unofficial detention centers, informal ones. These are primarily operated by human traffickers, criminals, militia gangs who capture people in the street. Upon their entry to Libya, if you're just entering, they capture you. In workplaces, they capture you. And they keep you in an overcrowded building, which is not official. It's not guarded. It can be incomplete building. And here you are tortured every single day to pay money. It's either you are taken to work as a slave in a farm to construct a house, or if you are a woman, you are put on constant rape and on prostitution. This is the form which happens in Libya. And in this informal detention center, the type of extortion and money that is demanded is something unimaginable. More or less, it's $5,000, it's $2,000, depending on what nationality you come from. If you come from a country like Nigeria, they know we don't have. They may charge you $2,000. If you're coming from Syria, from Bangladesh, you are a person of $10,000. If you're coming from Eritrea, Somalia, Kenya, you are a person of 10,000 to 15,000 US dollar. And these are stories that are on our website of Refugees in Libya, on our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. These are testimonies which we have gathered, and we have tried to pursue even legal arguments where we can try to track down the money, because it's a work of European actors.
Yeah.
They never allow you to track down the money. This is one part of it. So in this detention center, there is a process of dehumanization that I cannot explain. People are burnt. Plastic are tortured on them, and different form of torture. It's traumatizing to even imagine back that I was just in Libya 2 years ago, and that to this day I'm working on such circumstances every single day, and I receive calls from family, from people. I see blood every single day on my screen. This brings me again to a story of a Nigerian citizen from Ogidi.
Ogidi, yeah, go ahead.
He's from Ogidi. He's Jesua Maduka. He traveled from Abuja to Egypt, and from Egypt to Tunisia. I will need to follow it here. So when Jesua left Nigeria, he had already applied for his visa to Tunisia, and he got the visa issued by the embassy in Abuja. Upon his arrival on the 9th of March, he was detained by the Tunisian police, and he was taken on a trial under the claim that he had a fraudulent visa, that the visa was not genuine. But again, the purpose of his travel to Tunisia was tourism. He wanted to visit, to explore around, as many Nigerians travel around the world and explore. He had a return ticket for the 17th of March, which means he only had 1 week to stay in Tunisia. But even after being caught, instead of deporting him immediately, he was put in detention center. And to this day, I have been in touch with his family. If she's listening to me, Joy, she have tried everything she could. Even the Nigerian government have not done so much effort to help him. Why will he be detained for such amount of period, even when he had a return visa to return ticket to his country? Now we are trying to enforce that, and IOM is, following up his case to try to bring him back home, because all he needs is to go home. But who pays for the damage that has been done to him, the emotional, the trauma, the torture that he have gone through? Several months of unfair detention, arbitrary detention without any judiciary review, without any trial, the time that has been stolen from him. Coming to this point, this is where we are talking about Europe enforcing human trafficking in the North African region. The process that they have subjugated the Tunisian authority, the Libyan authority to, is to immediately give, set a profile of people that once they arrive to the territory, they are detained, whether they have visa or not, under the claim that they are approaching the coastal cities of Mediterranean. They aim to cross the sea illegally.
So if I may just interrupt you.
Everyone.
What's that profile? You said, sure. So the EU have said that they give a profile of people. Describe, if you can, that profile to us.
So this type of profile, economic immigrants. Economic immigrants, if we are to look at these countries, we look at green countries like Nigeria, which is not considered, unsafe country. It's safe. It's safe. There is no war. There's nothing. They consider them economic immigrants, people from Ivory Coast, people from Mali, people from Senegal, from the Gambia, from Guinea, from Niger, from Chad. These countries, once they arrive to these territories, their profiles are immediately referred to security check. And after racial profiling, the person on duty, which is a Tunisian officer or a Libyan officer, is really clueless about what it means to have a visa, is really clueless about human rights. All the claims of this particular person, if he wants to apply for asylum within Tunisia or in Libya, countries that are signatory to the 1951 Geneva Convention and are also signatories to the African Charters on human rights, on the right of migrant workers within a given territory, on the rights of women, and so on and so forth. So based on these particular people are immediately, put into a section that they only deserve detention center and pushed back and into the desert. Thousands of people are pushed to the desert every single day as we speak.
Wow. I have to say it's really quite shocking. Everything you've told us is quite shocking. Can I ask you about the Nigerian, what was his name? The Nigerian terrorist that you just mentioned? Joshua. Have you been in touch with the Nigerian embassy in Libya? And we have a chairwoman of the chair of the Nigerian in the Diaspora Association, or whatever it's called, Abike Dabiri. Have you been in touch with her or the embassy at all? And what kind of response have you had from them?
This particular question should be going to Joy, who is the sister of Joshua. She's in Abuja. The person that we are speaking about now is detained in Tunisia, not in Libya.
Tunisia, sorry. Yes, I meant the Nigerian embassy in Tunisia. Beg your pardon.
For my particular person, I have not been in touch with the embassy, but we know that usually, even though people have reached out to the Nigerian embassy, they are referred to the IOM to facilitate the return to home countries. So
what's the IOM? What's the IOM?
It's the International Organization of Migration.
Okay.
So they are responsible for repatriations of people. The group who were deported 2 days ago back to Nigeria were, helped on what they call humanitarian voluntary return program with IOM. So based on this, I communicated with the Joy and made sure that she was already in touch with the Nigerian government in Abuja and as well as the Tunisian embassy. But again, the process, as you can confirm, is always lengthy. It's not taken seriously. It's go and come, we will do this, we will try to understand this. Well, everything is being put into postponement. The life of this young man, Joy, is being taken down every single day. In the process, when he was detained in Tunisia, his mother died. Such an emotional breakdown. And all the entire family are really exhausted in this moment. When I communicate with them, I feel this thing is being done to me. Because people cannot understand until they are familiar with the stories.
You may call 0201 277 0993, 0201 465 7190. You may send a WhatsApp 0809 597 5805. We are streaming live on YouTube and on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter and on Instagram, Nigeria Info FM Lagos. My guest is David Yambio. We are talking about Libya and the migration or illegal migration and what Africans face going through Libya. As you know, you've heard many of the horrific stories.
Just nothing like irregular immigration. You might say irregular, but not regular.
Why would you say that? That's an interesting statement. What? No. Go ahead. I don't mind you actually correcting me. Why would you say irregular, not illegal?
Well, the thing is a word that is constantly used by European politicians to refer to people who are coming illegal, and there is nothing like that. It doesn't exist anywhere. It's irregularity in an irregular manner because the process where a person is concerned, there is nothing irregular about a human being. No, never. It's either in an irregular manner that a country has set a set of rules that should be respected, but once the person who is in the topic does not have the ability to go through this process or is denied to go through this process or is forced to follow certain lengthy bureaucratic procedure, the person is forced to enter in an irregular manner, which doesn't mean the person is irregular.
Okay.
This is where I need to correct you because this word, I think, have brought a lot of chaos where you see Europeans looking at you in the street and say, get out of my country, you irregulars. Don't you call me an irregular? I am a person. I have a family. And let's say I don't have a family. I'm just a common person wanting to make a living, wanting to live in a non-violent society.
Yeah.
Looking back to my country where bullets are flying all over, I do not want to live in such a circumstance. I'm here because I want to make a living.
Yeah.
And that does not make me much more less than a human being or than you are.
Thank you.
This is, I think...
I want to interrupt David. David, give me a second. Let me pick up this call. Hello.
Sure.
Hello.
Oh, okay.
Good afternoon. What's your name? Where are you calling from, please?
Yes, Omega John. You see, in a day, if I don't call your show, I will not be okay with that week. Thank you very much. I always enjoy your show. I miss the example conversation. Yes, my question to you, Ben. You made mention earlier, you talked about Libya.
Yes, in my introduction, yes.
Yes, I mean, that is why we have so much insurgency in our country now, Nigeria. Yes, I have been an advocate of complaining about the war going on in Libya. Now, can any African leader, as they take it upon themselves, just like in the U.S. now, we learned, or I heard in your news, certain drug cartel was picked up in somewhere in Mexico. Can't African leaders team up together, create a special force unit that will deal with these people that are into human trafficking? Instead of...
Oh, I'm afraid your line is gone.
Instead of finding the legal way of solving it, you can use the...
So what are you saying? I need you to wrap it up. What exactly are you saying?
Can African leaders use the elimination method? That's do away with these people, kill them and their collaborators or whatever.
Okay, you're talking about traffickers. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Hello? 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 Hello?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. What's your name? Where are you calling from? And your question, please.
This is Evangelist Johnson calling from Ikeja.
Okay, go ahead.
Look, I always like to listen to your program, but I don't call. Why I decided to call today is that I'm so shocked. A man that traveled for tourism from his country to another country today is suffering in another man's land. Please, I want to ask, is there any way you yourself can try to get to Nigeria embassy or wherever, where they can get to that man and rescue him? It's so sad. It's so sad, African leaders. It's so sad. It's so sad.
Thank you. Well, you can call us. I've still got time. 0201465719, 0201277093. You can send a WhatsApp if you can't get through, which is 0809-597-5805. It's a good question. I think that question was put to me. And David, although I'd like you to come in there. Firstly, do you know if Joy, Joshua's sister, is listening to this show right now?
I don't know if she's listening, but
okay. What I would like you to do is to give her details to the producer, my producer who was in touch with you, so we can possibly talk to Joy and have her on, arrange a time when she can come online. And we're not, this is Borderlines. We talk about all the issues across the world. This is Nigeria Info. We're the #1 radio station in the whole of Nigeria, talk radio station. But the one thing we don't do is wherever we can actually bring something, a critical issue, into the broader media public conscience, we will. The story of Joshua is one of those that looks like it needs to be in the broader public conscience, and we will be getting in touch with the Abike Dabiri, who is the chair of the Nigerians in the Diaspora Commission. Okay, I show you that, but please give.
Thank you so much. And I wanted to also address your former.
Okay, before you do that,
the person who called earlier.
Yeah, write that down. Let me just answer this call, and I'll give you a chance to answer both. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What's your name? Where are you calling from, please?
That's Mr. Patrick. I'm calling from Vo Sojo.
Okay, your question, please.
Yeah, this human trafficking. What I believe is that it's not happening only in that Libya, it's happening in West Africa, even in Ghana.
Yes, we know that. Yes, but what is your question for my guest?
In Ghana, in Senegal, in Ivory Coast, in Gambia, a lot of girls, small girls, 12 years. I saw two. They asked them not to talk to anybody. Then when the girl went to buy food for them, I asked the girls, "Where are you from?" One answered Calabar. I said, "Shut up! Don't talk." He said, "You should not talk to anybody." I said, "What? You see, these people are slaves, and the government are doing nothing."
Thank you. Right, let me give you a chance to respond to the other one. My other question that you wanted to respond to, David.
I think it was a suggestion that came from the first person who called, addressing the human trafficking. Why can African head of a state not come together to try to combat this, human trafficking? While he was referring to how it is being dealt with in the U.S. and the Mexican border and so on. One thing I have to tell that human trafficking is a form of slave trade which is happening. It's happening in a very modern way, in an indirect way that we do not understand until you are in the topic. What is happening throughout Europe and throughout Africa is that visas are denied to people to come to Europe legally, whether for education, whether for tourism, whether for medical purposes, whether for jobs, or whatever reasons that will bring them to Europe. If ever it is given to a Nigerian citizen or anyone in Africa, it is through a hurdle that I cannot describe. You have to go through different processes. You have to do all that exhaust you. And it's not more or less, it doesn't happen within 3 months. The minimum can be 6 months that you have to start the process. All this we put in question why. And coming back to Africa, we see that our only heads of state, our government, are being subjugated to bow down to policies, to mechanisms, to programs that are intended to improve our society. And this improvement does not come in our own way of living. Each community, each society have their own civilization. When our perceptions or opinions or the way that we would like to see our communities led is not put in place, and everything else is imported, ideas, imposition of how leadership is taken up, all this is affecting our youth greatly. We don't want to talk about resources. This is a topic that each Nigerian, each citizen in Africa knows that we are not lacking any resources. We are lacking, transparent leadership. We are facing foreign influence on our politicians, subjugation, and undermining of equality to the African citizens. Based on this way, because Europe is still want to keep the slave trade happening, they know that when they create this way, it is inevitable that people do not cross the border irregularly. And in the process, what happens? You find human traffickers who would like to make double profit within a given period of time, a very short period. If I hold you captive and I torture you and ask your family, I have $10,000 in my pocket. What do I want? This mechanism is exactly what Europe wants. And those who manage to survive, when they come here to Europe, they bow down. They bow down to everything, to work under inhuman conditions in a process that are not regulated. And no one can tell me Europe wants to stop this. No. The thing that African leaders can do just to address the topic of human trafficking, it is not a topic. It is slave trade happening, which is, again, influenced by European actors. What our African leaders should do is to fight, and to build an infrastructure for the youth to take up their initiatives, to build schools, to build hospitals, to open sectors that is able to provide jobs in different forms. Industrialization that we are now, talking about, it should be a topic. It should be a topic of open border throughout Africa. Why does Europe have open border policies? And there in West Africa, we have Nigeria, where they imposed the law of 2015, in 2015, the law 36, which was even prohibiting movement of the locals within the region. Nigerians who travel to Niger to try to go to Algeria or to Morocco or to Mali or to Burkina Faso were hindered under this Article 36 of 2015 until the coup leaders came into power in Niger and they abolished this law. When you look at these things, these are influences. If you try to understand the government of Tinubu, there is an enormous agreement that is being made with our government, with the Nigerian government, to say, okay, we are going to deport Nigerians. We do not want them to come. They are illegals. And in this process, the president, doesn't care about his people. He signs the bill and it becomes a law. And he has to abide by that as a state. The same is happening in Tunisia, where millions of euros is being allocated to Kais Saied, the dictator, whose people, also the population of Tunisia, is being oppressed by this system. The same in Libya, the same in Chad. Now there was the Trans-Mediterranean Migration Forum, which was held 1 week ago in Tripoli. Heads of state from the neighboring country, from Chad, from Tunisia, Libya, Europe, they all flooded to the country to discuss what? Immigration topic. We want to deport your citizens, but they don't want to deport them. They want to keep them in this circle of wants, of needs, of depending on human traffickers, so that the slave trade continues.
Wow.
This is something that we have to put very clear and point out to the perpetrators.
Indeed. I have a message here which I think you can still call, by the way, 020127709993, 020146579193. I have a message here on WhatsApp from Gabe in Aja, which I believe backs up what you've just said, David. Gabe writes, Evening Cecile, all that has been happening to black people, as described by your guest, is very tragic. But I feel we must be honest that the root reason why we suffer is because our black leaders have chosen to deal with us callously and impoverish us. These black leaders are from our tribes. They are our kin, but they have chosen to be wicked to us. It's so, so sad. And this is the thing. When I think of the story you've just told us about Joshua, who has a visa to go on vacation to Tunisia, it doesn't even matter what he's going to do. He has a valid visa. But he gets to Tunisia, the immigration officer takes it upon themselves to pretty much cancel his visa, and they throw him into detention. We've had stories and stories and stories, unending stories about, Nigerians. And it's true, my previous caller that said it happens all over. Of Nigerians getting to Libya, whether it's men, whether it's women who are raped, who are tortured, who are just ill-treated. But the one thing we keep hearing from our Nigerian government, the one thing we keep hearing from the Nigerian Diaspora Commission is telling Nigerians not to go to Libya. Should that be the message, David? Because, of course, open borders is what we should have. Europe has open borders. Yes.
That can never be the message. It should have never been the message, and it shouldn't continue to be the message. Our African readers who are saying this should be ashamed of themselves. Human beings, whenever they find themselves in a circumstance beyond their endurance, they create a mechanism. They are in a survival mode. This survival mode does not know torture, does not know whatever message is passed on to them. People believe in individual chances that whenever they go, their destiny is separate. And because even all these torture in Libya, a very good number of people are still surviving and arriving in Europe. And when they arrive in Europe to the process of dehumanization and exploitation that I have been describing, they still manage to have a living much better than what is being offered to them on the ground, because they do not have even political participation. Tell me how many of a youth out of the 200 million, more than 200 million Nigerian people who have the right to political participation. Can you tell me? Of course, it will be very complicated to see that such a useful population does not have a space where they can practice politics or for their affairs, for the needs of their country, for the wants of their country, to speak about their interests. Because it seems to us that whatever is happening in Africa today, let's say Nigeria, because I'm not focusing only on Nigeria.
Of course.
But looking
it's an
at the
Africa-wide thing
of Nigeria, it seems to us that the Nigerian population have been made, to feel that they do not know what their interests are. No, the Nigerian people knows what their interests are, but it is being manipulated by our black leaders, as the person just texted you on WhatsApp. And this leadership is highly manipulated, subjugated, put into, circle of, manipulation by European actors, by Western society and governance system. It's a sort of system that does not work for the people of Nigeria, because their needs, their interests, their understanding of things are not equally the same as Europeans. The weather, the geographical situation where they find themselves in is never going to be the same.
Yeah.
This is why we should also differentiate things. How should a motorcade be? You find our presidents, the prime ministers going with a convoy of 100 cars. Let's look at the shame that happened in Tanzania a few days ago. The president, I'm forgetting her name.
Yeah.
She was spotted with a convoy of more than 100 luxurious vehicles.
Yeah.
Well, the citizens are starving. They don't have clean drinking water. They don't have hospitals. When you look at this, they say this is how the former colonial masters used to behave. It is again the same continuation.
Yes,
but here
indeed.
the colonial masters cannot do that anymore. Here the colonial masters.
I need to interrupt you,
The prime
David.
minister is driving a bike.
Yeah. because we're about to.
I'm just telling you one final thing.
Yeah, go ahead, finish, because we're about to run out of time. I have an important question.
Ministers in this country driving their bike to workplaces. This is never the thing in our African leadership, because they are in the imagination that this is how leadership is. This is something that the youth need to stand up and change. And well done to the youthful population of Kenya.
Yeah.
They will change so much.
Indeed. I have a final question, and you have to be able to answer it in 30 seconds, please. I have a question here from, there is no name here. It says, good evening, madam. Please, I'd like your guest to advise Nigerians that want to travel, especially for the first time. I almost fell a victim. Advise them what? It's an incomplete message, but I think maybe you understand it. I've got to go to the 6 o'clock news. I'll give you 30 seconds.
Okay, I will try to be in less than 30 seconds.
Great.
Well, if I was to give an advice to Nigerian person who would like to travel without any experience, do your research, follow information, don't fall victims to this and that. What happens in Libya, you will be tortured. That is something in many ways. Torture comes in many ways. But to understand this, you have to follow different procedures and don't fall into a trap of arriving in Europe within 2 months or 1 week. That is something which is never going to happen. And thank you.
Thank you so much, David Yambio. David is the advocate and spokesperson at the NGO Refugees in Libya. David will be in touch. We'll let you know how we get on with contacting Joy. Thank you so much for all the great work you do. Lagos, Nigeria, that's the end of another show, Borderlines. Yvonne is here. It's the 6 o'clock news. You need to listen to it because they're still talking about the protest. Thank you. Goodbye.
There's a 99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.